Hello, scientists. Welcome to day 4 of our Changing Landforms unit. And today we're going to continue studying sand and learning more about it. Are you ready? So, if you remember, on Monday, in the last lesson, we observed sand samples to learn more about sand. What are some observations we made about sand? Do you remember? We observed different bag samples of sand. What do you remember? Please pause the video and share what were some of your observations. I remember some of you sharing that sand sample 2 reminds you of coal or charcoal because it was black. It was black and it looked like rocks. I also remember some of you sharing that sand sample 1 reminded you of crystals because the sand was white and you saw like shiny crystals inside. I also remember some of you sharing that sand sample 3 looked very fine and soft, and that sand sample 4 looked wet because it was packed together into a shape. I think some of you said it reminded you of dough. Okay. So today we will continue learning about sand. And we're going to be reading this book called Gary's Sand Journal. This book is about a geologist who observes sand and visualizes how it became the way it is. As you read, create pictures in your mind about where you think sand comes from and how it can change. So I see a word here, a vocabulary word, visualizes. In Spanish, visualizar. What do you think this word means? Visualizes, visualizar. Let's see, it says, let me read it again. This book is about geologists, a geologist who observes sand and visualizes how it became the way it is. Please pause the video and share your predictions on what the word visualizes means. So visualize means to make a picture in your mind using information from different sources. So it's when you learn different information and then all that information helps you picture something in your mind. And today I'm going to be needing you to do that. We're going to be learning about sand, and as we are learning about it, I want you to visualize the sand in your mind and what is going on. So we're going to start reading.
Gary's Sand Journal by Gary Griggs, Catherine.
Let me pause this. So we're going to start reading this text. We're not going to read the whole thing. We're going to read a few pages about Gary, who is a geologist, and he studies sand. And he's going to teach us a little bit about the reason for the different sizes of sand. So why are they different sizes? And also different colors. He's going to teach us why sand is different colors. Okay, are we ready? Please follow along the reading.
Halverson and Craig Strang. Observing sand. I'm Gary Griggs, a geologist. I collect sand from beaches all over the world. The sand from every beach is different. Take a look at some of the sand I have collected. What can you observe about it? Let's zoom in on some sand grains. What do you observe now? The closer I observe sand, the more I learn. The more I learn, the more questions I have. Scientists ask many questions. Here are some of my questions about sand. What is it made of? How did it become sand? How did it get to the beach? I did not observe how the sand became sand, how it got to the beach, or what it was before it became sand. That means I need to use the ideas I've learned as a geologist and my own observations to figure out the answers to these questions. My observations include things like the color, shape, and size of the sand. Read on to figure out how I use these observations as evidence. I use them to support my ideas about how the sand got to be the way it is. The size of sand. How big is a grain of sand? Sand grains are all small, of course. Still, some sand grains are smaller than others. If you rub sand between your fingers, some feels as fine as sugar. Other sand has bigger grains. The size of sand tells me about the waves that have moved the sand. From looking at the sand, I can visualize what kind of waves have moved the sand.
Okay, we're going to stop our reading there and we're going to think about what we just learned. Okay, so I know I just learned about the size of sand and how the size of sand depends on the waves, that are over the sand, crashing over the sand. So these are big waves and these are small waves. Big waves of sand are evidence of big grains of sand are evidence of big waves. Big waves can carry big things. Small grains of sand are evidence of small waves. Small waves only carry small things. So if you see small grains of sand, that means they're probably from a beach with small waves. And if you see big grains of sand, we know they're probably from a beach with large waves, with big waves.
The shape of sand. I observe the shape of sand. The shape of the sand is evidence that supports my ideas about how old the sand is. Some sand grains are rounded. Rounded sand grains have rolled around and crashed together for a long time. I can visualize the sharp corners wearing down as the grains crash against each other. This is old sand. Some sand grains have sharp edges. The grains have not had time to become rounded. This is new sand.
Okay, so let's stop and think. What did we learn in this section? So it talks about the shape of sand. And we have round sand, so sand grains that are round. And we have some sand grains that have sharp edges. And the shape of the sand tells us how old it is. I know sand that is round has rolled around and crashed together for a long time. So this sand is older because it's been rolling around for longer, creating the roundness, creating like circles in the sand, so like the grains, the round grains. And this is younger sand because it hasn't been rolling around for a long time. Therefore, its shape is sharp. It still has sharp edges. So this is old sand, newer sand.
The color of sand. Sand can be all different colors. Color is important evidence. It supports my ideas about what the sand is made of. Black sand is often made of lava rock. Hot lava sometimes flows from volcanoes to the ocean. The ocean cools the lava. The lava turns into hard, black rock. Waves crash on the lava rock. The rocks break into smaller pieces and become sand. Some white sand comes from coral reefs in the ocean. Coral reefs are made of many tiny coral animals stuck together. As the animals die, waves break off pieces of the coral reef. Those pieces break into sand. Some white sand comes from shells. Clams and other animals with shells live in the water near the beach. After these animals die, waves break their shells into sand. Even shells that start off purple, pink, or blue fade to white over time. Colorful sand can be made of different kinds of rocks. This type of sand may come from rocky cliffs near the beach or from mountains. Waves break rocks off the cliffs. Rivers break down rocks in the mountains. The broken rocks crash into each other and make sand.
Okay, let's stop and think. What was this section about? So we're using the heading. It was about the color of sand. And what did we learn? Let's see. Here we learned, about black sand. It's often made of lava rock. So black sand is made of rocks that come from lava from volcanoes. Okay, when lava sometimes flows from volcanoes to the ocean cools the lava turns into hard black rock. And then waves crash on the lava rock. The rock breaks into smaller pieces and becomes sand. So, my guess is that sand sample, I believe it was sand sample 2 that we reviewed on Monday, the black sand was probably volcanic sand. It was sand that came from a volcano, from the lava. We also learned that white sand comes from coral reefs in the ocean. We also learned that some white sand can come from shells. So, and even though some shells might be purple, pink, or blue, eventually, after so much rolling in the ocean, in the waves, they are going to become white. And lastly, we learned that colorful sand, like this, where we see some red rock, some black rock, some white rock, some brown rock, green rock, that this type of sand is usually made from different types of rocks. Rocks that break off from cliffs near the beach or maybe from mountains. Okay, so students, you learned about the color of sand. You've learned about, what else did we learn about? We've learned about the color. We've learned about the size of sand.
The lava.
As well, we've learned about the shape, the age of sand as well. We've learned about the age, the shape, the age, the color, and the size. So now what you are going to do, students, is think about what we just read. And in Seesaw, you're going to write about what you learned, what you wonder, and your favorite part of the book. So you could record your answers, or you could type them, or draw a picture, any way you want to express your answers. And you're going to say, I learned, what did you learn? Maybe you learned that black sand comes from lava. Or maybe you learned that round sand is older than sharp sand. Or maybe you learned that smooth sand, so smaller sand, smooth sand, small sand grains come from beaches with small waves. And then large sand grains come from beaches with larger waves. Maybe what's something you wonder, a question you have, and your favorite part of the book. Once you have finished, you may please submit your work on Seesaw. Feel free to also share with the class, share on Zoom what you learned, or any questions you have, or your favorite part before you go off and complete the activity. Thank you, students. Great job. See you next week.